In previous 9 weeks, we already go through a lot of services offered by Microsoft, starting from Azure Fundamental Services like virtual machine and storage account. Then we talked about different common services like database, NoSQL, and then we get into the data analytics space where we discussed Fabric and also briefly mentioned the Databricks and Synapse Analytics. The issue with the service is that it always keep on changing. Technology keep on changing in the past few years, right? And not only past few years, probably past few decades. So how do you survive all these data service? By the time, as we said, by the time when you start working in your find a job and start working as a data scientist or data engineer, the services that you use may very likely be different from what you learn in this class. So how are you going to survive that? And if you look back in 2015, that's when Microsoft released their first version of Azure SQL Data Warehouse. At that time, all the data sources were coming into what they call the Azure Data Factory. And after processing, it will be saved to Azure Databricks or Data Lake Data Lake Storage, and Azure SQL Data Warehouse. You can clearly see there's a third party, which is Azure Databricks. There's the Data Lake, and there's also data warehouse, and all this information will get into Power BI. At that time, you don't even see the data science portion of that, right? But then apparently we know since it got evolved, and in 2021, this is what it was like in 2021, where you see Databricks and Data Lake and the data warehouse all get combined into a Synapse Analytics, which offers the pool of processing, but data will be ingested into the data lake storage, which means this becomes a ELT process. So back to the previous slide, where you have the source data and the Azure Data Factory will transfer them and load them into the data lakes and data warehouses. This is an ETL. You extract them, and the Azure Data Factory will perform the transformation and load them. But then in 2021, Microsoft started to adopt the ELT process, where you will directly pull data into the data lake storage. Then you will use data factory, most likely only for copy purpose. Then, but with some manipulation, with some transformation, you have tools from Synapse Analytics, including the data warehouse endpoint and the data lake house. So all these will goes into the analysis service, or eventually goes to the Power BI platform. So this is what it looks like. But then it got changed again in 2023. There was this the Synapse Analytics as we introduced. This time it integrates everything from pipeline to lake storage to SQL pools and Spark pools and the Data Explorer pools, but it still does not include Power BI, right? So in November 2023, we have the Microsoft Fabric, where the underlying storage becomes the fundamental one lake, which is completely controlled by Microsoft. Then you have the different pools, T-SQL, Spark, KQL, everything on top. And then you have the features available from Fabric Data Factory to Synapse Data Engineering, and you have a specific place for data science and a specific place for real-time analytics. But this is what the Microsoft has been promoting in the past year. It's a new product that is still not fully matured. We see there are like things that you cannot do here, or not so easily that you can easily do in Synapse Analytics or in Databricks. But there's no doubt that Microsoft is moving ahead with that, and it's still changing. So it's a combination of some most popular Synapse features and Power BI features plus consolidated infrastructure. So looking at this, the question, the question analytics is that how are you going to handle the job as a data? How are you going to handle what you are going to have in the data engineering job? And I think the most important thing about that you would like to talk about is actually the Azure, the data engineering side. Data engineering, as we said, there are two types of data engineering: Spark and Azure Data Factory. Now, so looking at the process of Azure Data Factory may give you some hint on how you will uh, adopt to new technology or get the backward compatibility with old technology, right? So Azure Data Factory there was invented as a SQL Server integration service. Over the years, after Microsoft tried to move everything into Azure, the server-based SSIS becomes the Azure Data Factory, which is a serverless Azure-hosted version of SSIS. But then, as Microsoft brings up Synapse Analytics, as we saw it, it becomes Synapse Pipeline. But then that one was not so successful, so somehow Microsoft brought back the name Azure Data Factory, only to rename it to Fabric Data Factory. Through all these pipelines, through all these names, we even see some of the pipelines, the functionalities, both in Fabric Data Factory and the Synapse pipeline, right? We saw those demonstrations. We can see like there are like 90%, 95% similarity among all these versions, but there's always some small differences. So there are some, and also there's a mixed marketing message from Microsoft. At one point, it seems that Microsoft will phase out the Azure Data Factory, but then it seems that Microsoft will phase out the Synapse pipeline. Then again, Fabric comes in, so we really don't know what the branding is or will be in next year or 2 years. And we don't know what features will be added into each one. Like we saw when you introduce the integrated data set, right? You see how many different options Synapse Analytics support, whereas comparing to Fabric, how few options support. But we are sure Microsoft will keep on adding support for Fabric. But the most important thing is the underlying technology is still the same throughout all these, and the operation, the functionality is required is still the same, right? So they pretty much share the same core. So once you learn one of them, the others will be very similar and you should be able to adopt. So what my suggestions is that you will be utilizing, you will dive yourself deeper into one of them, get a thorough understanding of this. If your work, after you find a job, if your work requires your usage of that, I think this course, whatever we introduce in this course, at least can provide you with some fundamental understanding of what's going on and why, what each component is for, and how you should organize your tools. That being said, we will only use Spark Notebook in this class, but you already see what they are and you know the fundamentals, right? Because fundamentally, it's about compute and storage, right? So fundamentally, these are two questions. What do you want to do to the data? You want to read them, right? You want to use them. But if you usually, if you want to use them, it cannot be in the form that it was read. It has to be undergoing some transformation. So how do you do this transformation? You can use virtual machines. You can use some processing services from Azure, like Azure Data Factory. You can run Spark pools, Spark clusters, or you write your own SQL somewhere or Python code somewhere. So these are the compute options you have for running the data processing and running the data moving, right? The data movement plus transformation. Then the other question is, where are the data sets stored at? In what format? You can store that in relational database, in data lake files, or NoSQL database. But fundamentally, there are two things when you think about your data engineering or data science job: compute and storage. If you can understand what the compute and storage is, no matter what work they present you, what technology they present you, you will have a clear understanding of what you need to do next.